Another opportunity for us to learn, another opportunity for us to get the information that we need in order to make healthy choices in our life. And, with everything that's been going on in society, with all of the advent of diet fads and pills and potions and lotions and everything else that are out there promising these amazing results, it seems like this is a good time of year to do a presentation on healthy weight loss, especially when you have the opportunity to get some straight information, things that aren't geared towards trying to guide you in a particular situation, trying to convince you that there is a brand new secret sauce formula that has been discovered. No, the whole purpose of these weight loss or these types of lunch and learns or these educational components that ID Life brings to you, the whole purpose of them is to provide you information so that you can make informed choices and informed decisions. Today, though, it's going to be a little bit different in the sense that the first thing you have to commit to, and you really do need to commit, is you have to forget everything that you've ever been taught. See, the biggest issue that we run into when we're talking about healthy weight loss is our own belief system. And that belief system is usually cradled in things that we have been taught, that we have read, that someone has said, that we trust, that all of a sudden becomes our own personal belief system with regard to the things that can't be changed, the sacred cows, the things set in stone, the foundational components of what our belief system is. And a lot of times those foundational components are actually what inhibit us from getting the results that we're looking for. So let's kind of jump in. First and foremost, diet. Just the definition itself, to cause to eat and drink sparingly or according to prescribed rules, that word is defined so poorly. It really is. I mean, everyone is on a diet, but just because you're on a diet does not mean that you have to eat or drink sparingly, or does not mean necessarily that you have to have some set prescribed rules, because that assumes that somebody else wrote the rules for you. No, what you have to do is you need to listen to your body, but most importantly, you need to understand something if you were going to go on a quote-unquote diet, that in the word diet itself is the word die. The whole idea behind what we're trying to do is we're trying to give you an education so that you don't have to make life miserable, that there are better ways, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. When we travel around the country and we talk to various people about healthy lifestyles, at ID Life we always talk about, we lose fat and gain muscle. We don't lose weight. There is a difference between those two, and if you've never been taught the difference between losing weight and losing fat and gaining lean muscle, then that's another webinar for another day. But the idea is, I've heard this statement so many times. I've lost the same 30 pounds 3 times. Well, the reality is you haven't. Because when you actually look at it, when you lost the weight the first time, you lost fat and lean muscle. On your way back up, you gained the fat. On the way back down, fat and lean muscle again. On the way back up was fat. You notice the consistency thing in there is the fat, but not the lean muscle. See, when we're losing and gaining, we're on the yo-yo cycle. It is not the same 30 pounds. Many times what we're doing to ourselves is lowering our lean muscle mass, which is going to lower our metabolism. So, most popular weight loss methods, first and foremost, are these wonderful fad diets. That's the first thing that you see. Calorie restriction, reduced calorie diets, those are always the next staple. Eating smaller portions, it's kind of a portion of calorie restriction or reduced calorie, but smaller portions is another method. And then using low calorie or reduced calorie foods and beverages. These are when you walk down the aisle and you see those fat-free, reduced fat, Weight Watcher type meal planning items. You have the Nutrisystem stuff out there. You have your zero-calorie foods. Those are some of my favorites, that have all of the wonderful artificial sweeteners in there, to make you think that, these are great for your diet because you're counting your calories. And then, of course, you have exercising as the other method. Just remember, you will never exercise out a bad diet. I don't care how hard you work. All you have to know is that that wonderful McDonald's Big Mac, with extra cheese and sauce, the large fry and the large Coke will get you in there at about 1,500 to 1,600 calories, which means as soon as you're done, make sure you get out there and run your half marathon to burn off what you just ate. As I said, you will never out-exercise a bad diet. It just won't happen. So, let's get some stats and figures, because the biggest issue for people that are trying to do healthy weight loss is they start feeling bad about themselves when it doesn't work. The whole idea behind this webinar today is to tell you, hey, look, you're not alone. 90 to 95% of diets fail. There's a reason why. We're going to go through that today. Like I said, the first thing you have to do is be willing to forget everything that you know. You have to take out all of your staples, all of your foundations, all of your belief systems, and be open-minded to the idea that there are some things that you believe to be true that very well may not be. So, first and foremost, let's get this one out of the way. 90 to 95% of diets fail. That's the beginning point. At any given time in America, 50% of people are trying to lose weight. Well, that's over 150 million dieters in the U.S. at any given time. Don't feel alone if you fall into this category. Remember, 74% of the U.S. population is obese or overweight. That number is rising dramatically. So are a lot of the diseases associated with it. So again, you're not alone. 73% of weight loss resolutions are given up on by January 31st. That's right. Weight loss is one of the #1 resolutions for January 1st, and it takes less than a month for more than 3/4 of the people to give up on their goal. Again, if this was your goal and you're not where you want to be, don't worry. Again, you're not alone, but we're going to teach you how to get where it is you want to go. 67% of gym memberships are never used. That's right, 67, or another way of looking at it, 2/3 of people pay for the 1/3 of people that actually use the gym. That is actually a very specific stat. In fact, most gyms actually have a number greater than 67%, as crazy as that sounds. We are actually paying for something that we never use. The typical dieter will make 4 attempts per year to lose weight. So, hey, look, if you've already tried it once this year or tried it a couple of times this year and it didn't work, don't worry. There's a lot of people that keep trying. The issue is we're here to give you the information to help you along the way. Americans spend more than $2.5 billion on artificial sweeteners every year. See, the thing you need to know about artificial sweeteners is the body does not differentiate between sugar and the artificial sweetener with its insulin response. See, insulin is released into the bloodstream. The whole idea behind insulin release is to get rid of the sugar. And of course, what ends up happening is when insulin gets into the bloodstream with an artificial sweetener and does not find the sugar that it's looking for, insulin does its secondary function, which stores everything in the stomach as fat. That's right, you did not order a cheeseburger and Diet Coke, you ordered a cheeseburger and love handles. Do not fall into this trap. America has a sweet tooth. There's a reason why we're spending $2.5 billion a year on these artificial things. Don't go down the path. Americans also spend about $14 billion on weight loss surgeries every year. Some of these are to save their life. Others are cosmetic. There are all kinds of reasons why people choose to go down the surgical path. But the reality is we are spending more and more and more every year to modify our biology to take care of our weight problem in this country. And as you can see, that number is somewhat staggering. Americans spend more than $60 billion a year on diets. That's right, we're spending $60 billion a year trying to figure out what is the secret sauce, who has the secret potion, what is the right way of doing things. Well, we're here to kind of give you some straight information as to why a lot of these diets failed before they even began. Americans spend more than $100 billion on junk food every year. That's right, we're spending $60 billion on diets, but $100 billion on junk food. That's just, the American way. As we call it, we have the SAD diet, the standard American diet, as it's referred to. Then, of course, Americans spend about 300 billion on fast food. That's right. That 100 billion on junk food was junk food. The 300 billion is on fast food, which probably qualifies as junk food as well. So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us here. We have the little angel and devil on each shoulder. We're spending 60 billion on diets and 100 billion on junk food and 300 billion on fast food. We are in a cycle that we are not going to get around. In fact, if you really want to talk to somebody about diets, what you have to say is we know, based upon statistical average, that about 90% or more of the people that are listening to this webinar sometime in the next 72 hours are going to get a meal in a bag through a window into their car. Half of them will eat that meal in the car. That's just the reality of where we are as an American society, mainly because we don't think that we have time to prepare healthy meals. This is insanity. It truly is. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome. This is the cycle that we're in. We have to think differently. And, speaking of insanity, one of the things I cannot believe that is still a belief system, especially if you are thin, you've never been heavy, you won the metabolic genetic lottery and you have a genetically fast metabolism. This is something that creeps into the thought process of a lot of people, which is the understanding of what is willpower, what is the real answer here, what is it we're supposed to do. And the reality is the insanity is all about calories. See, most people think that calories is the answer. Calories is the simple equation. If we just understood calories better. If calories were something that everyone could just understand, if you just turn over the nutritional label and see the calories, you'd be able to lose the weight because you're just eating too many calories. In fact, the reality is most people don't even understand that, 500 calories is not 500 calories. Here's the thing. A calorie is not a calorie. It just simply isn't. This is an example of what a stomach looks like with fruits and vegetables versus fats, processed carbs, proteins. But the reality is, if you give me a 400-calorie candy bar and a 400-calorie, filet steak, they do not have metabolically the same effect on the body. That's what it boils down to. And when people just focus on calories, they have failed before they started. Anyone ever familiar or ever seen somebody with this statement? I see it all the time. It's what we call the dreaded diet cycle. This is me before, this is me after, and this is me after. In other words, I lost the weight and then I gained the weight plus some back. You ever wondered why? Have you ever wondered why this is the case? Especially when, hey, we did a great job of counting our calories. We got down to the weight that we wanted to get down to, and then somehow I just gained it all back. Most people would attribute that to willpower, but the reality is it has a lot more to do with how your body works. See, here is a simple explanation of how the diet cycle really is affected metabolically. You start out with something called your BMR baseline. That's your basal metabolic rate. We'll talk about that in just a second, and I'll show you how you get to what the BMR is and whether or not BMR is actually what you should be focused on. But we start with the BMR baseline. As you begin to lose your weight, it takes roughly about 90 days to get you where you want to go. You notice how that BMR baseline drops. What that means is with weight loss, also your BMR baseline drops with it. So your metabolism is slowing down. After 90 days, you feel good about yourself. You accomplished your goal. So what do? You haven't changed the way that you eat. You haven't changed your lifestyle. You haven't changed your environment. What you did was a temporary diet, eating things and doing things you don't like, you don't love, and you don't want to keep doing. So we now are going to revert back to what we used to do. That's just historically what people do. What ends up happening is we start to gain weight. At about 90 days, our basal metabolic rate is still down there on the person that was, where we lost the weight. But unfortunately, we've gained all of our weight back at 90 days. But unfortunately, it takes about 120 days for our BMR, our basal metabolic rate, or our metabolism to catch up. Hence, we were where we were, we lost what we had, and we gained that plus more back. It's simple hormones. It's just the way the body operates. The body is a system designed to preserve itself, take care of itself, to protect itself. And when we start weight loss programs, the body thinks it's stressed, it's under attack, and has to self-preserve. As a result, that metabolic rate will drop. And of course, it takes a long time, a lot longer than it does for us to gain the weight back, for it to get back to where we need it to be. So let's look at the calorie balance method, and since this seems to be the main focus that most people want to follow. This is the thing that most people think is the way to lose weight. If I simply just count the number of calories and I keep the number of calories under a certain number, I will lose weight. Well, let's look at it. First, how to calculate a calorie deficit. Well, as we're about to show you, it's not as simple as you might think it is. This is a complex equation. It really is. So let's break it down to its basic format. We start out with BMR, that basal metabolic rate that we talked about earlier. How do we get to what our BMR is? Well, it's real simple. If you just take 66, add that to 13.75 times your weight in kilograms. We're in the US, so if you want to convert your kilograms to weight or pounds, simply divide your weight in pounds by 2.2. Add that to 5 times your height in centimeters. Again, if you don't know how to convert to centimeters, multiply your inches by 2.54 to convert that. And then subtract 6.8 times your age in years, no conversion necessary there, and you get to what your BMR is. Just so you know, basal metabolic rate, this equation that we're looking at right here that is still used today, is called the Harris-Benedict principle, and it was actually founded in 1919. That's right, next year we will celebrate the 100th anniversary of the basal metabolic rate formula. Maybe we got it wrong. Maybe there is a problem here. Maybe it is a little higher than it should be. Maybe it's lower than it should be. Who knows? Because we don't know who you are. Because you're designed individually. Your rate is individualized. And this is just a general rule of thumb that does have an error rate, sometimes substantial. But if we get to our basal metabolic rate, the next thing we need to do is exercise caloric burn. Because that's the other thing, is how much are you moving? You know, the basal metabolic rate tells you what you're going to burn if you just sat still all day and did nothing, just survived and you were alive. Your exercise caloric burn means if I move during the day. Doesn't mean you're in a gym, doesn't mean you have to exercise, but does mean that, you know, you are moving around. If that's the case, how is that calculated? Well, that's simple as well. For men, you're going to calculate your age times 0.2017 minus your weight times 0.09036 plus your heart rate times 0.6309 minus 55.0969 times the time that you spent working out or exercising divided by 4.184. Yeah, that is your equation. Women, yours is a little bit different. Yeah, your numbers are a lot lower. It's just not fair. The Journal of Sports Science is where this comes from. There are wearable devices that have their own algorithms. Some are better than others. I always tell everyone, if you have a Fitbit challenge at your work because you're a member of a corporate wellness program and you want to win your Fitbit challenge, there are 2 ways to do that. 1, put in the effort, put in the work, or 2, find somebody with a riding lawnmower and go sit on that thing while it vibrates for about an hour. You'll have yourself 15 to 20,000 steps. There are some serious error rates in those wearable devices that you need to be aware of. But if you really do want to try to figure out your caloric burn, there's you a formula that you can use. So we are working on an advanced math degree as we move forward with our BMR plus our caloric burn. Next, we have to count the calories that we ate. All kinds of calculators and everything else out there for us to do that. But the reality is this on the calorie counting. Food labels are imprecise. There's about a 20% error rate, plus or minus, on most food labels. Some are worse than others. Meal prep, how we prepare the meal. You know, what did we use to prepare the meal with? What did we add to it? That creates about a 35% error rate in our calculation of calories consumed. Then, of course, you have calorie absorption. Most people didn't even talk about this, but the reality is, depending on, you know, who you are, what your metabolism is, will determine what your ability to burn those calories are and the amount of calories that you're getting from the food, as well as your ability to absorb the calories from that food. There's about a 10% error rate there. And then, of course, an unhealthy gut can influence your calorie intake by plus or minus 150 calories. So again, if you can figure out all of these error rates and issues and problems, you might be able to get to a number. But if you take simply your BMR that we've now learned how to calculate, you add that calorie burn if you can figure out the formula, you subtract your calories consumed if you can figure out what they really were minus the error rates, you have a calorie deficit. And as long as that calorie deficit is 3,500, you are going to lose a pound, or at least in theory you will. You do need to know, though, there was a study done recently. You can read all about it. Just Google it, about somebody who did a high-fat, high-protein, low-carb, I think it was like 5,100 calories a day for 21 days. And based upon that, they should have gained roughly about 16 pounds. They only gained 2.9. And then for the next 21 days, they did the standard American diet, or the SAD diet, and they did eat the high carb, I think it was about 67% carbohydrate, meals with the processed foods and everything else, eating that same 5,100 calories, and they gained 15.8 or 15.9 pounds, the 16 that was expected to have been gained. What does that mean? Well, scientists are still trying to figure it out because it wasn't a double-blind study, but you do need to know that a calorie is not a calorie, and just because you have a deficit doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose weight, because if there is an error in your calculations, then obviously there's going to be a different outcome with regard to the amount of weight that you're going to lose. One of the other big error rates in this entire equation on BMR and calorie burn and calorie consumption is that all variables do not remain constant. What do I mean by that? Well, see, the theory is if I just have 3,500 less calories, tomorrow than I had today, I'll lose a pound. What that assumes is my BMR is going to stay constant. Once I do that calculation, no matter what I do to try to lose weight, in other words, my calorie restriction my BMR is going to stay constant. My calorie burn is going to stay constant. And of course, my caloric intake and absorption is going to stay constant. The problem is none of those variables stay constant, which completely nullifies the ability to take that type of calculation and get the results that you're looking for. The reality is there's a metabolism effect. See, as our calorie consumption goes down, our BMR will drop as much as 20 to 30%. The body feels like it's being attacked. The body literally goes into self-preservation mode, and what it ends up doing is slowing the metabolism and thinking that, okay, we are going into starvation mode, we need to start protecting ourselves, so we're going to slow down metabolism, we're going to increase hunger, that's the other aspect of what happens, and we're going to start using energy in places that we need it only, vital areas, which is why you get lethargic and you start to lose focus. In fact, as calorie consumption goes down and metabolism slows, the body goes into what we call the catabolic effect and begins to store fat as a self-preservation response. That's just what happens. So calorie restriction isn't necessarily the way to go. In fact, it may be that in order to lose weight, you need to eat more. As strange as that sounds, but it's more of the right things, which we'll talk about in just a second. If you're not familiar with the body set point theory, you should be. This is something that you need to understand because we all have an internal thermostat. See, imagine your thermostat in your 20s is set to 160 pounds. That thermostat will click up at about 1 to 2 pounds per year based upon the average across the U.S. What that means is that person in the 20s that was at 160, okay, by the time they hit their 40s, or as much as 200 pounds. Now, how did that happen? Well, our body set weight starts to click up at 1 to 2 pounds per year. It's gradually going up. Now, what happens when we try to lower our weight, okay, we want to go below our current 200-pound weight, so we go on a diet, our body responds hormonally. And I'm really simplifying this. You really should take some time to learn what body set point is because it can explain a lot of different things. But the main thing you need to know is that as you start to lose weight, hunger response goes up. Your ghrelin hormone will go bananas. Your metabolism will slow. The leptin hormone will start to go down. Leptin is the or not the satiety, the satiation hormone. It's basically telling you that you're full. It's going to start dropping. That's going to start happening because the body wants to regulate back to its body set point. That's just what happens. If you start eating too much, you overeat, you went to the buffet and you gorged yourself, or you went to, a New Year's party and just, let loose because it's New Year's. Well, what's going to happen over the next few days is your hunger level is going to go down, your metabolism is going to go up. In other words, ghrelin is going to go to sleep, leptin is going to come in and say, nope, we got plenty. The metabolism is going to fire up, and we're going to get the body set point back to the weight that it was. That's why we can go on vacation, gain 5 to 7 pounds, and in about a week to 10 days, we're back to where we were. Really not changing much, just going back to our normal process. The body is designed to do just that. That's just what happens. The other thing that you should know about body set point theory is that what they have found is that what causes people to be fat is insulin. That's just it, insulin, hormone in our body. It is the regulator of our sugar intake, along with a lot of other things. But obviously, it's related to glucose and our sugar. It's probably why we're becoming such a fat society. If insulin truly is what makes us fat, that hormone, that release really does what makes us fat, and we are eating and consuming more than 30 servings of sugar a day, you can see why we can say insulin is what is making us fat in the society. We have to reduce our insulin in our bloodstream. Easiest way to do that is to reduce our sugar consumption. That's why sugar is talked about so much in our presentations. So public service advertising. Let's talk about some things real quick. First, there's no such thing as a secret weight loss pill. At best, these things are useless. At worst, they're dangerous. We continuously in this country wait for the magic pill. There is no such thing as a magic pill. It's diet, lifestyle, exercise, and environment. Those are the 4 components. Diet, exercise, lifestyle, and environment. That's what we have to get back to. We have to understand these things. Stop waiting on the magic pill because it doesn't exist. Second, safe and sustainable weight loss is a maximum of 1 to 2 pounds per week. Any program promising faster results just isn't sustainable. At worst, it's dangerous. It did not take you a day to get to where you are. It will not take you a day to get to where you want to go. We have to take our time. We have to get to the points where we know what's going on with regard to our bodies and get back to understanding that sometimes the slow and purposeful approach is a much better idea than the fast approach, because fast does not always mean that we're going to get the results that we're looking for long term. Let's talk about this one, the detox or the cleanses. Your body was given something amazing. It was given a colon. And when it's fed the right things, the colon does an amazing job of detoxing our body. Unfortunately, so many people go to artificial cleansers and do these cleanses because they believe the body just can't uptake the vitamins and nutrients from the food and the supplements that I'm taking unless I have a cleanse. The reality is these are temporary at best, they're unsustainable, and at worst they're dangerous. There's no need for them. Feed the body what it needs. It will cleanse itself out. There's no reason to go to these artificial cleanses. It's just one of those things. Again, don't follow the insanity model. Don't follow everyone else. Don't sit back and wait for the super pill. Don't wait for the detox cleanse and think that's going to get you where you want to go. Don't worry about these lose 20 pounds in 3 days diets. Avoid those things. Let's talk about this one for a second. Because the other thing that is insane is people think that, they just lack willpower, or I'll just use my willpower to win this fight. Well, fad diets equal good and bad foods. Good and bad foods result in a bad situation for people that try to use the diet, and the reason why is because as soon as they go to eat one of those bad foods, they feel bad about themselves because they ate one of the quote-unquote bad foods. As a result, they give up on the fad diet. That's why 95% of these things fail. Calorie restriction equals hunger. That's right. When you're going to restrict your calories, guess what? Your body, as we've just known, as we saw in the body set point theory, it's going to increase hunger and slow metabolism. That's why you're not getting the results that you're looking for when you go to the calorie restriction method. And then, of course, nutritional deficiencies equal cravings. That's right. When we are nutritionally deficient in certain areas, in vitamin D and vitamin A and K and others, what ends up happening is our body starts craving those things, and that triggers a response from our gut and our brain saying, hey, we want these things. We need these things. That results in us reaching for the wrong thing a lot of times. So let's talk about sugar, because we've talked about it a few times. We talked about willpower, and people just think, hey, I'll just use willpower, or this person lacks willpower, that's why they're heavy. The reality is sugar is an addiction. When you actually look at it, sugar fires the brain the same as cocaine. With cocaine, we send somebody to rehab with medical oversight and supervision. With sugar, we send them to Weight Watchers or tell them to go on a diet. The reality is you're dealing with an addiction. The way that you have to deal with an addiction is you have to wean yourself off of it. This is not a, hey, I'm doing 30 servings a day, tomorrow I'm going to do 0. That's not realistic. There are not very many people that have the willpower to do that. What it's about is backing down, understanding the situation, understanding that this is going to be a slow process, understanding that you can follow what's called an 80-20 rule. You do not have to be perfect all the time to get the results you're looking for. If you'll make a change and 80% of the time follow a better choice, better lifestyle, better diet, 20% of the time enjoy yourself. Do what you normally do. I'm not telling you have to stop living life. But the reality is you are dealing with an addiction that you do need to be aware of. Let's talk about that addiction. How strong is your willpower? Well, when you look at the addictive nature of the reward threshold, and of course this was a study done on rats and the length of access, you can see heroin, kind of the spike up and down, cocaine, kind of that steady up with the drop. Food actually has a more addictive nature than even cocaine, and in some respects more addictive than heroin. This is something that we've seen consistently over and over and over again. Why? Well, see, food has this wonderful thing called a bliss point. If you're not familiar with the bliss point, what you need to understand is food companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year to find the point at which, when they continuously add sugar to a product, that there's a point at which they call the bliss point. The bliss point is if I put 1 more gram of sugar in, I lose the flavor, I lose the taste. It's no longer the most addictive I can make it. If I back it back to the last gram I had, it is the most addictive product I can make. It is the bliss point for that particular product. That's right. Food companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars finding ways to get you addicted to their product. That's why you can be driving down the road at 2 o'clock in the afternoon after 2 hours after lunch and smell that wonderful smell coming out of the smokestack of your favorite fast food restaurant, and boom, all of a sudden you're in the drive-thru, it's coming through the window, you're consuming it, you're 30 minutes down the road trying to figure out why you just ate, you're stuffed, you don't feel good, and what just happened to you. Well, what you're fighting is that addiction, that hypothalamus, that dopamine response from the brain, and it is, in fact, something that you should be aware of. What is our willpower over sugar? Well, it's pretty crazy. We're 33 teaspoons a day, 545 calories, 21 to 34 grams per 8 ounce in the sugar content in the average soft drink now. And, of course, the average American is going to consume somewhere between, 11,800 to 12,000 pounds in their lifetime. Yes, enough to fill up a dump truck. So the top 5 reasons why diets fail. That diets offer a temporary solution to a behavioral problem. As we've seen, the issue that we have is behavioral. It's not anything other than that. It's something we are fighting in our brain. We are fighting our hormones, and we're fighting our diet, our weight set point. That is something that is already pre-programmed into us. Diets label food as good or bad. This is just a bad theory. You just don't want to go down that road. Diets tell you when and how much to eat. Your body will tell you when and how much to eat if you simply listen to it. One of the biggest issues we have in this country is we still have people that are part of the Clean the Plate Club. More than 90% of us are. Most of us were taught that you're not getting up from the table until you finish X. The reality is that just leads to obesity, scientifically proven over and over and over again. If you're a parent, please, please, please don't teach your children that. Number 4, diets trick you into thinking they have a new way to lose weight. There isn't a new way. It's a simple process once you understand how it works. Number 5, diets don't address the lifestyle change required to achieve the desired results and make them permanent. Remember what I said earlier. It very well may be that you need to eat more in order to lose weight, contrary to our belief system. Remember what I said when I started this? You have to throw out everything you believe to be true in order to get the results that you're looking for. So let's talk about the hypothalamus for just a second, because I want you to understand this, because this is one of the things that you're fighting, because the hypothalamus has a pleasure center, and it's called a dopamine response. But the hypothalamus is the pleasure center of our body, and in fact that it controls our hunger, our thirst, our body temperature, sexual activity, arousal, blood pressure, heart rate, and sleep. A lot of things happen in that little portion of the brain, but you need to understand this is the thing, that dopamine response is the thing that's triggering most of it. What's the difference between hunger and a craving? Well, hunger is a biological need for food to sustain the body's function. Cravings are controlled by the brain and are dictated by feelings of pleasure and delight. In other words, hunger will come from the gut and craving comes from the brain. Now, technically, hunger comes from the brain as well. We misinterpret that signal a lot of times in the form of thirst as opposed to hunger, and we go for food instead of water. But the reality is those cravings are centrally located in our brain, and they are something that are dictated by a very strong addiction, and you need to understand what they are and where they're coming from. So this is our hunger games, if you will. You have ghrelin that is released from the stomach saying, hey, look, we need food. Well, that ghrelin sends a signal to the hypothalamus. That hypothalamus then says, okay, I'm going to release neuropeptide Y, and that neuropeptide Y creates appetite. So that's kind of the general rule of thumb. Stomach to brain, brain to release of the hormone response to, hey, look, I need food. That's what happens. The other way is leptin. Leptin is the, hey, I'm full. I don't need any more. It goes from the stomach up to the brain to the hypothalamus. That releases the propionmelanocortin. I really did mess that up badly. I do apologize. And that means appetite suppressant. Here's the problem. It takes a little while for that signal to go up to the brain. So guess what? Slow down. Number one thing needed for digestion is oxygen. Oxygen. In other words, if you have a shovel as your fork, and you know what I'm talking about, if you are the type that eats your meal in 2 minutes, chances are you're overeating every single time that you eat. You need to slow down. Take a bite, put the fork down, have a conversation with the person that you're talking to. These wonderful dumb phones, some people refer to them as smartphones, have killed the dinner conversation. In fact, the best thing you can do is say, hey, no phones at the table. Turn the things off. Let's at least have 30, 45 minutes of uninterrupted conversation. Because if you ever notice when you're at a dinner meeting or you're having dinner with friends and you have that conversation going and everything else is happening, you look down at your plate, half of it is still full of food and you're full. That's because you actually gave your body an opportunity to have that leptin response or that satiety response go up to the hypothalamus, release the hormone to let you know, hey, look, I don't need any more food. So take your time. The biggest issue with diets that we're dealing with is most of them are going to leave people with these feelings. Low energy levels, uncontrollable cravings. They're going to have an inability to focus. And most importantly, it's going to leave them in a bad mood. Let me go back to that because I want you to make sure you see that. Low energy levels, uncontrollable cravings, an inability to focus, and a bad mood. So when we're trying to find things to help us in our weight management goals, we need to find something that can actually affect these 4 areas. See, because if we can actually have help when we actually start down the path of trying to do weight management in the right way, we need to address the lower energy level. We need to address the uncontrollable cravings that are going to come on. Because remember what I said, as the weight starts to come down, metabolism will slow, hunger goes up, cravings go up. We also lose the ability to focus because guess what? All we can think about is our cravings, our hunger, and our food. And of course, our mood is affected because all we can think about is our hunger, our cravings, and our food. So if we can have something that can help with these areas, this is where we need to focus in. So what's the top secret answer? How do we get there? What is it that we really need? Well, quality versus quantity. See, most people who count calories fail. We've established that 90 to 95% of them fail. The reality is we need to eat better things. We need to cook again. I always say the easiest way to know whether or not something is good for you or not is, did you eat it on grandma's table? Because if it wasn't on grandma's table, good chance it's genetically modified, it's processed, it never existed, and it has some things in it you don't need. But, grandma's table is a good rule of thumb. But more importantly, what we need to understand is the caloric density of food is much more important than the caloric number of food. And if we eat the right things more often and get back to our fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, good fats, good carbs, there are such a thing. There's a difference between complex and simple carbohydrates. Avoid the simples. Those are the things on the right. The complex ones are the ones on the left, as you see here in this picture. If we get back to that understanding of lifestyle and eating, guess what? You're going to get the results that you're looking for. If you go down the calorie counting method or the calorie restriction method or one of these fad diet methods, you're not going to get the results you're looking for long term. I'm not saying you're not going to get a quick result. You very well may. But it is not sustainable and it will not last. We need to go down this path. The other super secret to getting you where you want on the weight management goal, half your plate should be colorful. Right now, the average color on the American plate is brown, tan, or white. It's covered in brown, tan, and white. We have no color on our plate. I hear, texture is an excuse a lot of times for this. I hear, I don't like fruits and vegetables. I didn't eat them as a child. They don't taste good to me. The reason they don't taste good is because they're not covered in sugar. I bet you if I took fruits and vegetables and poured a cup of sugar on them, they'd be more, sustainable for you. But the reality is we need to get back to this. And what you'll notice is after about 3 or 4 weeks, your appetite, your taste buds and everything change, and all of a sudden they're desiring these types of foods. But we have to get back to, if you just make half your plate colorful, you can pretty much eat whatever else you want on the other half of the plate in reason and get the results that you're looking for, or it's a lot better than what you're currently doing anyway. I just love this quote when I saw it from Ben Franklin. Tell me and I forget. Teach me and I remember. Involve me and I learn. See, we have too many people that want to give somebody a fish. What I mean by that is they want to basically show them the answer. They don't want to teach them. What we need to do is teach people how to fish. We need to give them the ability to learn for themselves. That's the whole purpose of these Lunch and Learns, is to give people the tools, resources, and information to make informed choices. Because when we do that and we stop doing things for people or telling them what they need to know, and we start sharing with them the benefits of true knowledge, true information, and stop listening to all the fads and crazy diets and other things out there, they'll actually get the results that they're looking for, and then they will learn their own way and be able to help and teach others. That's kind of what this is all about. At ID Life, we really believe in healthy living. That's what we're about. That's what the whole purpose of these Lunch and Learns are. I do apologize for today's being so long. Typically, I like to keep these under 15, 20 minutes, but I felt like today's was important because so many people struggle with this issue. And the main reason why people struggle with the issue is directly related to a belief system and something that they've read, they've been taught, they heard in school, or something else that really has no foundation in science or reason. And, the great thing about ID Life is we're always going to tell you what you need to hear, even if you don't want to hear it. And the good news is when you're ready to hear it, you can come back. And guess what? We'll still be saying the same thing, because what it boils down to is simply diet and lifestyle create our nutritional gaps. And as our diet and lifestyle improve, those nutritional gaps decrease, and we get the healthy living that we're looking for.